Hello and welcome to the Scoreboard Podcast. I'm your host, Rivka Boord of Jets X Factor, the home of the best New York Jets content on the internet. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com, discount code 80. Subscribe to our YouTube memberships and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Today we're joined by Michael Nania after Michael dropped a podcast in the middle of the night last night. Michael, thanks for joining.
I'm doing good. I had to get in the late night podcast with PJ. I was flying back from Nashville. I had to grind as much film as I could because unfortunately the Wi-Fi at the Nashville airport is just absolute garbage. So I couldn't do as much as I wanted to in the morning. So after all that, got in a midnight Cool Your Jets podcast that's out in the universe. So now we're here, already halfway to the Jets' next game.
Yeah, so it's hard to know on Tuesday whether you're still reviewing the previous game or whether you're starting to prepare for the next one. I think it's a combination of both. But we'll start with the Tennessee game. I had said my podcast last week was titled Blow Them Out, and the Jets clearly did not do that with the Titans. So the question is just how concerned are you about the Jets after 2 weeks, having been blown out in one game and then gone a lot tighter than you would have hoped against the team whose defense seems better than maybe anticipated, but still overall should have been an easier victory?
Yeah, I mean, I think the way I look at it is the Jets still have the potential to do all of the things that we predicted them to do. I know you had them winning the Super Bowl. I believe they're capable of the same thing. A lot of Jets fans think they can do it. So I think they're still capable of doing that. But at this point in time, I think what the first two games have shown us is that for now, they should be viewed as a team that is capable of doing that, not a team that should be in that mix just yet. And it could be, 3-4 games until we're back at that level. But for now, I think the Jets still have some things to work out before we could say, okay, they are squarely in that mix at the top of the AFC. For now, I think, they have that potential, but they do have some questions to answer before I think we definitively see them as a contender.
Do you think it's fair to say that if Levis had not made that ridiculous backwards pass fumble thing, that the Jets may well have lost this game?
Probably. I would say so because the big difference in this game is the fact that Tennessee did not get enough points early in the game to match how much they were actually dominating the Jets because, it was ugly to start. I think we were all very frustrated. I voiced a lot of that. A lot of us did. And after all that, it was only 7-0. And it was largely because of that very stupid fumble on Levis's part that, erased what could have been at least a 10-0 lead, but potentially 14-0. So, yeah, that was a big part of why they won this game. But at the same time, I do think it highlights an advantage that the Jets have now with Aaron Rodgers, and that's, they have the quarterback who's not going to make those mistakes. And sometimes they'll face quarterbacks who also won't do that, which I think this week you're running into one of those guys in Jacoby Brissett. But a lot of games, they're going to play more Will Levises in the world. And they're going to make mistakes like that. Aaron Rodgers generally isn't. And it's going to win them a lot of games. So at the same time, I think, yes, they were bailed out. It also kind of highlights an advantage that they have in that the Jets didn't make those mistakes. And it's something you can count on them to continue doing because of Rodgers.
I mean, it's kind of like what we talked about before San Francisco, right? Winning the turnover battle. Like the Jets lost the turnover battle against the 49ers. And that, to a certain extent, may have influenced the game. Not entirely, but it may have. And in this game, they won the turnover battle, and that definitely makes a big difference. And as you said, Rodgers is a big reason why they can win the turnover battle.
Yeah, for sure. And first game, Breece Hall had a fumble, but you don't expect that to be something that continues. Maybe he has one or two more throughout the season, but that won't be a regular thing. Rodgers had the one interception that was, not a great throw on his part, but not really interception worthy kind of throw. It was just an unlucky break. So I think that's what the Jets calling card is going to be this year, is a low turnover, low mistake offense that is going to dare the other team to make more mistakes than them. And it's the total opposite of what this team has been for years. But with the way they're pass blocking, with the way that Rodgers is getting the ball out quickly, you can feel comfortable that even when the Jets aren't clicking, which they haven't through 2 games. They're averaging they got 266 in the first game, 265 last game in total yards. They are not clicking by any means yet, but despite that, they're also not throwing the game away. They're allowing themselves to stay in the mix here. So I think that's going to be a strength of theirs this year.
Now, moving on to just, I think, something that all Jets fans I would imagine are surprised about. I mean, I'm particularly surprised about it, is why their run blocking is struggling so much. Obviously, we saw, again, Breece Hall averaged 4.4 yards per carry after averaging 3.4 in week 1, but that was basically hinged on one 30-yard run. The rest of the time he averaged, I think, 3.2 or 2, something like that, like a very, very low yards per carry average. And if you watch it, more often than not, it seems to be the blocking and not just Hall. So I guess the question is, why is that happening? Because we thought that the run blocking, if there's one thing that we could count on as this being a strength of this team, it was kind of run blocking.
Yeah, and I think, the way they're playing in pass protection gives you some optimism that they'll get it together because the pass blocking has been great, I think. But yeah, run blocking, it hasn't looked ugly. That's the thing. When I rewatch it, I'm not looking at it like, wow, I don't see hope here. It's a lot of one block away type plays where there are a few good blocks, but just one person isn't getting it right. Or maybe one combination sometimes, like, someone doesn't pass it off too well, or, someone lets a defender go because they expect someone to pick it up, but no one does. There's always one little quirk that's blowing up the play, but there are still good blocks out there that show the potential that it has. And I think in the long run, what's Breece at right now? I think 3.9 through 2 games. That's not going to be maintained throughout the course of it's just very difficult to picture that, considering what he did the last 2 years and the difference in talent on the offensive line. So I think it's going to be fine. This might not be the week that it explodes just yet because they're running into another very good run defense here in the Patriots. But yeah, I think the way they're playing pass protection, the fact that this is a new unit that's just gelling, I think there's, some finer details to work out, but you could see the potential. And the thing is, like, this is a reconstructed unit, 3 new players, AVT coming off an injury. None of these guys played in the preseason. I would argue that maybe the run game is more affected by that lack of chemistry, because in the past game, at least with Aaron Rodgers at quarterback, we all see it every single play. He's setting those protections up until the last second of the play clock, which that's another issue that can be improved, but he's setting those protections. He's getting the ball out quickly. Aaron Rodgers does a lot of things to assist the pass protection, but he can't do as much in the run game. He can still help in some ways, like that Braylon Allen touchdown where he apparently changed the side. But he can't do as much as the pass game. So I think it's in the run game where, you have to have a feel for how long do I have to spend passing off this D tackle to my guard before he has it? And when can I explode to the second level and pick up this linebacker? And knowing, just the guy to my left, is he someone who's going to be aggressive in climbing and he's going to leave his guy? I have to account for that. Or, is he going to pick him up and I can go to the second level? I think there are little things like that chemistry-wise can be improved as the season goes on. But I'm not too discouraged in the sense that anyone looks, declined or not playing. Some guys have been disappointing. I think AVT's run blocking hasn't been great to start. Tittman as well. Tyron hasn't been awesome. So there's been some shaky performances, but nothing that is too alarming. I just think that they need time to build up the chemistry as the season goes on.
Now, we talked a little bit about this earlier, which is just that the Jets seem to be running the same rate of zone that they did last year, as opposed to the gap that we thought they would run. Now, it's not just an offensive line thing, though. If you recall, Breece Hall in his career averaged 6.2 yards per carry on gap runs and 3.7 on zone runs. Now, you could blame that on offensive line, fairly low small sample size, relatively speaking, but I mean, it's not just about maximizing. And you wrote an article in the offseason about how getting Breece to the line of scrimmage more quickly could maximize his speed and give him more space. So given that it's the offensive line strengths, it's Breece Hall's strengths. Why do you think they're just so insistent on sticking with the zone runs?
Yeah, that's a story that I think now that we're 2 games in is something that is worth monitoring, because a big part of our optimism for this run game, this O-line for Breece was, at least for you and I, people who are looking at it in this lens, was the fact that it seemed like they were making that philosophical change to their run game because it fit with the offensive lineman they brought in. It fit with what Breece Hall does and what the numbers say he's best at. But yeah, 2 games in, now that we're here, it doesn't feel any different. I mean, sometimes they'll run, some power gap stuff, some, inside zone, pullers, stuff like that. It's not non-existent, but statistically the balance is pretty much the same. I think it's 57% zone is what PFF has it at, and last year they were 56. So pretty much identical in that split. It's a lot of outside zone. And, to be fair, it doesn't, like, a lot of their best plays have been those outside runs. And I wouldn't say that, any of the gap stuff has looked noticeably better, at least from what I'm remembering. But, despite that, I do feel like from an overall lens of things, it would be more effective if cracking guys on the edge, let's toss the ball and, get some pullers out on the outside. I do feel like that fits these guys more, and we're not seeing a lot of those things. So yeah, I would keep an eye on that. And I don't think it's the end of the world if they don't do that, because they do still have a lot of athleticism on the O line. I think the skill position potential is really good. Like, I think Lazard has had some good blocks so far. Mike Williams has a lot of size. So, this was potential, that outside run game too. But yeah, I did think it was going to be a change that they would make, and they haven't done that yet. So I would say that's a contributing factor compared to our expectations.
And then just what about the play calling? I mean, they seem to go run, pass way too often for a team that has Aaron Rodgers. Now, it's not just I always wonder about it. How much of this is Hackett and how much of it is Rodgers? Like, for example, there was that 3rd and 1 where they ran it straight up the gut, and it got blown up. Now, it could have worked theoretically if the Jets didn't blow, like AVT didn't just get absolutely destroyed on the play.
Yeah,
but still, ultimately, you wonder about it sometimes. Like, if Rodgers has the freedom to change the play at the line, or he has 2 plays called, check with me, why is he sticking with run plays so much?
Yeah, and I think, we give Rodgers a lot of praise for his ability to adjust and maneuver things, but there's also, it doesn't mean he's perfect in that phase. There are situations where I feel like, the Jets have run the ball, but, knowing how Rodgers is able to, like that throw he made to Lazard, where he just spit it out, 3rd and 8, quickly up the seam, like, he's capable of doing that. So there have been plays where they've run into looks where I thought maybe they should have been throwing. So, he should be judged on that too. The fact that he could sometimes not make the right call. But yeah, I mean, it's been interesting to watch this run game. It's for them to fulfill their ceiling, they had to be a great run team. And I do think that they could do more passing to set up the run. Like, in terms of play calling, that's something I think Hackett can be better at, because he's come out in both of these games, a lot of run, pass. It's clear they want to be a run-first team that's setting up the pass off of that, but they just haven't been consistent enough in the run game for that to work. So when they've really hit their stride, both, the one drive they had against the Niners, or they had 2 touchdown drives with Rodgers. So those 2 touchdown drives, and then late first half in this Tennessee game and second half, when they've hit their stride, it's when they've gotten the passing game going, especially with quicker throws. And then that's created some run game room off of that versus the other way around. So I would like to see, especially against a New England team that you don't want to get behind against because they are built to protect the lead, I would love to see them come out and be more aggressive with early down passing in this game and see if that could widen out the defense, soften them up, and then get your run game going off of that. And there will be games where maybe they can be run, pass, and have that work, because I think they have the offensive line talent and the running back, the 2 running backs potentially, to be successful at that once they get it going. But for now, as they get their run blocking more consistent, I think it would serve them well to be a little more ambitious with early down passing to soften up the defense a bit.
Yeah. Now, speaking, of Rodgers himself, we were talking about this also about how he seems to be double clutching or not making some throws that are there,
Yeah.
or just not even looking to places where maybe he should be looking. Why do you think Rodgers is so has like? I mean, we talked about that corner out to Garrett Wilson, where if he threw it on time, that was an easy completion. So why do you think Rodgers is so hesitant to throw balls when it's not like he's double clutching because someone isn't open or isn't? Sometimes, like I thought on that Garrett Wilson, the interception he threw in week 1, it was because Garrett ran a bad route. And so he kind of hesitated and then he threw the ball too far inside. But on some of the throws in this game, the throw was there and he just didn't make it.
Yeah, that one to Garrett Wilson, the corner route, and I shared that clip if you didn't see it. But that one was really frustrating. That's the type of thing that if Zach Wilson did that, I would be all over it. Everyone would be all over it. Like, this guy just does not have the vision. He cannot play at this level type of play. It was very, very odd for him to be staring at that, clearly thinking about it with great protection and the window wide open, and just pass it down to scramble around and then get hit and throw the ball away. So that was the most egregious example, but there were multiple plays where it felt like, there may have been a shot to take, another read that he could have gotten through, but it was a little bit of hesitancy, jitters. And you could chalk a lot of this up to second game back, coming off an Achilles, hasn't played in a year, hasn't played a full game start to finish since basically 2 years at this point. So it can be a lot of rust. I think it's something you hope will improve as the season goes on, but he is also 40 years old, probably doesn't have as much trust in his mobility as he once did, especially coming off this injury. And he doesn't look very athletic moving around, frankly, and I don't think anyone should expect him to, but that doesn't prevent him from still being a great quarterback at this stage of his career, because I don't think Tom Brady was ever athletic in his career. But as long as you have the arm talent and the brain and the feel, you could still slice up a defense without running around. I mean, there are a lot of quarterbacks in the league who could run right now, and we're seeing some of the worst passing production that we've seen in years in the league because most of these guys don't know what to do. I mean, look at the quarterback on the other side last week. That guy can move, but he doesn't know what he's doing out there sometimes. So I do think we should keep our expectations realistic with his movement. I don't think it's going to get noticeably better in terms of like how fluid he looks out there. But what I think he can improve is just having the confidence to hold the ball a little bit. And like, he's going to get hit sometimes. I think he has to be a little bit more willing to take those hits. And you understand that it might take him some time to build that up, given that he's only played 2 games back from the injury now. He's taken some hits. He's played behind this offensive line that's proven it could give him a lot of space and time to go through his reads. So hopefully the way the offensive line is played gives him some confidence to, give him, the faith that he could stand back there and like, let me get through 2 reads. Let me stand here and take this deep throw and trust that I don't need to scramble and protect myself. So I think some of it is that there might be an internal clock in his head. Like, I got 2.5 seconds here. Let me hit my drop. 1, 2, boom, ball out, or I got to scramble, because he might still be a little hesitant to take hits. So I think that could be part of it. So it's something that can improve with time, but there are also limitations that I think are likely going to remain. So I'm interested to see how the season goes on, how some of these things develop for him.
Yeah, now shifting to the defensive side of the ball, what do you make of Sauce Gardner's worst game as a pro?
I don't think it's anything concerning looking forward. Like the one touchdown he gave up, or was tagged to him, I think that's more Chuck Clark's fault. That was great coverage by Sauce. Could he have played it a little better and deflected it? Sure, but I mean, that you look at that window, it's hard to create a tighter window than that. It's miraculous that it got through, and it was a great catch. But Chuck Clark should have been over there deflecting that. He was later. I think most other safeties probably would have made that deflection. Deep coverage has never been his strength, so I would put that more on him. But some of the other catches he gave up, like again, I don't think it's anything too concerning. A lot of them, he was playing off coverage, and they just had an 8 to 10 yard slant on him. There was one play where he was playing man, and they motioned, I think it was Ridley, across the formation. He got caught up in like 3 other routes. It's just a good design. His tackling is a little concerning. There have been some very bad missed tackles the first 2 games, but he also struggled with that last year, so it's not totally new. But it was not a good game, but I don't think it's anything. I mean, considering his last 7 games, he was giving up like 0, 7, 10 yards each game. Like, he has earned himself the leeway to have a game like this, so I'm not too concerned about that.
Now, regarding the pass rush, obviously that's a major talking point, especially with Johnson going out. But let's put Johnson aside for a second, just looking at this game. I mean, Will Levis, according to Next Gen Stats, was pressured on 60% of his dropbacks. But how much of that was the Jets pass rush getting there versus versus the Titans offensive line being terrible versus Levis just holding the ball forever? I mean, he had 3.03 average time to throw.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you brought it up going into this game that he's a guy who has always taken a lot of pressure, college into rookie year, into the first game this year. And that's not, when that's consistently happening, it's a quarterback thing. It's a product of a guy holding the ball too long. And yeah, that's what's weird about some of these pressure numbers, because like some of these stats are not that bad. Like you mentioned, his pressure rate, that's really good. And, a lot of guys in the Jets, like Clemens has a bunch of pressures and a few other guys, but it doesn't really match what we've seen on the field. So I do think there's an aspect of like Levis creating a lot of those pressures just because he's holding the ball for a pretty long time. Then I also think the pressure quality hasn't been great. Like, if that's a thing, however you measure that, because it's a lot of like kind of reckless type pressure where, maybe someone gets through on a stunt, but there's also a giant gap in the line for Levis to scramble through. That happened a couple times. Like, they're not getting those like I think a big reason the pass rush was so good the past 2 years is because they got a lot of cave in from across all 4 spots. So when they were creating pressure, it led to a lot of sacks. They weren't an amazing sack team, but they were a good sack team. And even when they weren't getting sacks, it was, resulting in a hit or a throwaway because the quarterback didn't really have a lot of places to go, because you were simultaneously getting all these guys pushing the pocket in on the quarterback. And that's not really happening a lot right now. So I think a lot of these pressures are one guy winning, and then you have 2 or 3 other guys who are totally washed out. And then that's how you got some of these Levis scrambles or, plays where it's technically pressure, but he could just step up and still make the throw. So there are signs of hope from some of these guys, but the problem is just they don't have enough people doing damage at the same time. So that means even if you are, technically getting pressure, it's just not affecting the game as much as you would like it to, especially for this defense that counts on its 4-man rush so highly.
I mean, one guy who I feel like has shown up at least a little bit, on the game, like if you watch the game live, is Solomon Thomas. I mean, he missed a couple of sacks, one last week, I think one this week again. I think he also had a sack, but he could easily have 3 sacks by now. He has had a few more cleaner wins where he could, he really came in and, again, the quarterback was able to get away, but he seems to be in the early going, kind of doing what he did last year before he was playing every down, because for until Quentin Jefferson got hurt, Thomas was playing as a quality backup defensive tackle.
Yeah, he definitely had some clean wins in this game. Like you said, couldn't finish some of them, but that's also a product of kind of what I was just saying. Like, as a defensive tackle, it's hard to finish a sack when you win cleanly. It's just, no defensive tackle in the league or very few of them, if you are, you're a freak, has the bend to consistently finish those sacks. So for them to get their sacks, you really need the edge rush to cave it in, so the quarterback is just kind of stuck there and you could tackle him. But if only Solomon Thomas is winning on a rip to the outside, and the other guy, whether it's Quinnen getting doubled or Jalen Holmes is on the field, if he's getting dominated and you don't have an edge rush, then a great win is just going to be like, okay, I'll just step up to where you were if you're the quarterback. So that's the biggest problem with the pass rush. Like I said, they really are lacking the camaraderie of multiple guys complimenting each other when they're rushing the quarterback. It's very reckless in both phases is the best way to put it. Just there's explosiveness still on this defensive line. They play aggressive. They get in the backfield in both phases, but it's not in a controlled, cohesive manner that leads to big stops in either phase. So that's an issue right now.
Now, I want to get to the Patriots game in a minute, but the last just about obviously losing JJ. What do you think the chances are that they get Reddick back in here? I mean, because until now I've been saying stand your ground, but at some point, I mean, they don't have any proven edge rushers left, and I mean that's the whole basis of their offense is being able to of their defense is being able to get home with 4. So I mean, do you think Douglas just kind of does something to maybe give Reddick just that 1 year of the money he wants, or I don't know, just some way to get him? I don't want to do it. I've been saying all along that he should stand his ground, but at this point, it's like, what are you supposed to do?
I feel like there's a chance in this mini bye week that it will happen, and it's an interesting discussion because you don't want to say like, all right, now you give him whatever he wants, because we don't know what he wants. Maybe he won't show up unless the Jets make him the highest paid edge rusher. And if they're not going to do that, he has no interest in showing up. So we don't know what his demands are, and it's hard to say. Just give him whatever he wants. But I think at the very least, the Jets should try to engage with him and make something happen. And I think there's a chance it'll happen in this mini bye week. I know right now there are reports saying like, there's still no news to report, no discussions, but I think it's pretty obvious by now none of these people know what they're talking about in regards to this contract dispute. No one has sources or information. When there's something to be known, it will be known. So I think during this mini bye week, they will try to re-engage, but it's just too dire at this point for them not to. I know they are firm in their stance. That's very clear at this point, but now with Jermaine being out, it would be reckless to not at least try to make something happen, because you have a solution. Not a lot of teams get into this situation with injuries, lack of talent, and have a solution like that sitting right there, just waiting to show up. So as a team that's trying to win the Super Bowl this year, that's their goal. I don't think you're taking that seriously if you don't at least try to make something happen here. So I do feel pretty confident that they will at least attempt to start pushing this forward after the Patriots game. Maybe that's a little optimistic on my part, but logically it's just hard to see how you don't try to do that as the Jets at this point.
Yeah, so Momo just wanted to say, if any Reddick contract interferes with paying some of their 2022 draft picks, then see ya. I just don't think you can afford to say that at this point, right? With JJ out.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, look, I think the long term should be taken into account, because I don't think you want to be too reckless to where let's blow everything up now and into the future just because we got to fill this short-term hole. But the Jets are just so committed to this year that you really have to try to, like I said, at least try to do it. I'm not saying give him anything he wants, like allow him to name the facility the Haason Reddick New York Jets practice facility and put his face on the side of the building. I'm not saying, cave into everything, but you have to try, or you're not taking this season seriously enough, because the defense is supposed to be the core of this team and the pass rush is supposed to be the core of this defense. And right now you're throwing out the same lineup you put out there in the preseason. So I don't think you have to put your pride aside at this point if you're the Jets. And it does, kind of stinks that you have to do that, because it doesn't seem like Haason Reddick has operated in good faith. But, if you want to win football games, you got to try to get this guy in there, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Just in the last couple of minutes that we have, if you can still do it, I
Yeah.
wanted to ask you just about the Patriots game. Any initial thoughts? Have you looked into them at all? What do you expect? What do you think the Jets need to do to win that game?
Well, I think it's interesting because similar to Tennessee, it's, a team that's not on paper as good as the Jets, or at least apparently at this point in the season, but they're also built to exploit the Jets. Tennessee, I think, was a good matchup, or the Jets are a good matchup for the Titans because Titans are a team that can run the ball and they could stop the run, and those were issues for the Jets. So in the San Francisco game and are continue to be through two games, and New England, they're running the ball really well. They're stopping the run very well. And on top of that, the one thing that Tennessee didn't have against the Jets was the ball security and the turnover margin. Patriots can win that. They haven't turned the ball over yet this year. And this is interesting. Jacoby Brissett is tied with Aaron Rodgers for the lowest interception rate in the history of the league at 1.4%. So, as much as Aaron Rodgers can avoid interceptions, Jacoby Brissett can do that too. So, if it goes the same way as the Titans game went, early on, the Jets can't stop the run. They can't respond with their own run game, and they get down. It could go in a worse direction than the Titans game did because Jacoby Brissett is a lot less likely to hand you a game-changing turnover than Will Levis is. And on the flip side of that, Jacoby Brissett's he's not chucking up that bomb to Calvin Ridley that turned into a touchdown. He's not getting any of those scramble plays that Levis got in the second half. So he doesn't have the upside that Levis does that led to some positive plays in this game. So he won't be as explosive. But I also think the Pats' run game looks better right now than Tennessee's does. So that could be more effective and that could counter some of that. So, yeah, I think it's important for the Jets to come out fast in this game. Biggest cliche of all time. Everyone says it, but just with the way this Patriots team is built, if they go up on you like they did against the Bengals in that first game, they are a hard team to come back on right now because they don't turn it over. They can milk the clock with the run game. So I think it is important for the Jets to get up on them early in this game. And to go back to what we said with the play calling earlier, I think passing is a big part of that. Come out aggressively and challenge their pass defense because as good as they've been against the run, their pass defense has not been phenomenal. Geno Smith had a really good game last week against them. So you can exploit them through the air. So I would like to see the Jets come out aggressively and throw the ball. Don't treat this as, it's the Patriots. They're not explosive. We're better than them. Let's be conservative and not make a mistake. Don't do that because if you do make a mistake, they're going to get up on you and they're going to defend that lead. They look like a team that can do that. So be aggressive, exploit them in the passing game, take the early advantage, and from there, just trust that you have enough defensively to not allow them to catch up on you.
I mean, in this game, I would say it's the Jets should be playing a lot of single high with Chuck Clark in the box. All right, I know that they like to put Adams in the box, and I understand why, but ultimately having Chuck Clark as a single high doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, we saw it on that sauce play. I mean, even when he makes a decent read, he just never was fast, and now he's almost 30 off a torn ACL. It's he just doesn't have the range for it. And Tony Adams is a lot faster than he is. I think like if Tony Adams were in that same position as Chuck Clark, I think that's a pick. So
Yep.
yeah, I think you're right there, especially against his Patriots team. They've only completed 11 passes to wide receivers this year, so they haven't really threatened you through the air much. I think you want to dare them as much as you can to throw the ball outside. Even if the Jets are without Carter and Reed in this game, which when Salah says 50-50, I round that down to 0, so I would expect it. So even if they are without them, I mean, they've consistently done a great job of having their other DBs ready to step up. They did it against the Eagles last year. Eccles stepped in and did a pretty good job against the Titans last week. So regardless of whether those guys play, you should be confident that you can cover these guys, and everything should be about stopping that run game.
Yeah. Okay. I think we're going to go. That's it for now. Although I said I was going to stay on and answer some questions, but Michael, thank you so much for joining. And everyone can check out Michael's work. You have your Twitter handle in there, Michael_Nania. Check him out on Jets X Factor. Probably the best, as you say, one of the best New York Jets minds in the world. So thank you, Michael.
Thanks for having me. Sorry I couldn't do any longer, but
sure.
Yeah. I mean, I'm looking forward to this week. I think, for anyone going to the game, make some noise. I want to hear it loud out there. I'm not going to be there, but the primetime environment at MetLife was great last year. So looking forward to see it again. And yeah, thanks so much for having me.
Okay, thanks, Michael. Take care. Okay, guys. So now I'm just going to get to some chat. Go Jets. I agree. I was also almost in panic mode when the Titans went up 7-0. I mean, it's funny. Our Jets X Factor Slack tends to be quieter than not during a game, but I was just sitting there and spamming our chat with negative content because I was also panicking. It was like, this play calling is terrible. This defense is terrible. Everything's terrible. This is going to be a nightmare. The Jets can never do anything right. And honestly, if Levis hadn't made that mistake, I mean, we might be still talking about that. And so the Jets cannot play the same way. They need to come out faster. Christian channel member, thank you so much for being here. Trust in Rodgers. I mean, only to a certain extent. You could trust in him, but again, he didn't have a great year in 2022. He's looked okay so far, but he has not looked certainly like peak Aaron Rodgers. He looks more like game manager Aaron Rodgers, and he made some mistakes. I mean, he made some reads that he missed some reads, and so. Again, I want to see the play calling get better. I want to see him be more decisive when he sees a good matchup. And yeah, I mean, I'm not trusting in Rodgers, but I can't say I completely trust him. Now, how are the Jets going to stop Stevenson? Are the Jets really favorites in this game? I don't know how we stop the pass running the ball down our throats. Well, look, hold on 1 second. Sorry. Yeah. So. Look, the Jets held Stevenson to 3.1 yards per carry in the first matchup last year. I'm looking at the first matchup because the second one, Bailey Zappi was starting. It was totally irrelevant. But they held Stevenson to 3.1 yards per carry. The problem was that Ezekiel Elliott ran 16 times for 80 yards. But I think altogether they held the pass to like 3.9 yards per carry. Now, obviously, this year's run defense is not last year's, in part because Al Woods is not there, and in big part because John Franklin Myers is not there. But the thing is, when you don't have the really much of a threat of the pass, the Jets, as I said, they should be playing single high. I would go single high with press coverage on the outside and 8 in the box. I mean, stack the box on every play. I'm sure that's what these other defenses did, but I think that's the way you have to stop. You have to stop Stevenson. The bigger issue, just as much as the run game, is Stevenson in the screen game, because the Jets have not been able to cover that in recent years. I remember one last year where Stevenson dropped it, would have been a first down. And so it's a good question. I mean, in terms of whether the Jets are favorites, they can't not be favorites in this game. I mean, they're at home. New England's offense still hasn't shown much. That they're coming off a pretty not great loss to the Seahawks where Geno Smith had a 56-yard touchdown pass to DK Metcalf. And so the Jets are favorites. I think the line is 5.5 or 6.5. To me, that line, I would, if I were betting against the spread, I would take the Patriots to cover. I think this is going to be a close game. I wish not. I wish the Jets could blow them out. I was hoping before the season that they could blow them out, but it just doesn't look like it's going to be the case. Ron, thank you so much for hitting the like button. Anyone who can hit the like button, please do. Howdy, Harlan. Thanks, Harlan. So you said the Jets need to bulk up on the D line. Maybe Watson McGregor would be better on early downs than Clemens and McDonald. Look, Clemens is as big as Watson. Clemens is bigger than Watson McGregor. And so look, McGregor has not looked great against the run. He hasn't looked that good altogether. And so it's just kind of interchangeable. And then in terms of Watts will probably be active this week because JJ's down. I assume maybe they'll try to play Watts more against the run. He didn't look great in the preseason either. But I think at this point they're playing McDonald a lot because he's really their only edge rusher with any sort of real talent. And just because you're bulky doesn't mean you're good, as we've seen at defending the run, as we've seen with Javon Kinlaw, who has not done a very good job despite his size. And so I don't think size is the only problem. Now, moving Thomas to defensive end and activate Taylor defensive tackle. Problem with Taylor is just as bad against the run, if not worse. That's why the Jets are deactivating him. They know that he has some pass rushing talent, but they're putting Jalen Holmes in there because they think Holmes is better against the run. I can't say that I agree just because I don't think Holmes was any better against the run than anyone else. And I'm a proponent of putting Taylor in there only because if you have no good run defenders, you might as well get the guy with the better pass rush upside, which Taylor clearly has more than Thomas or than Thomas for sure. And so I would Thomas and Holmes. And so I would personally like to see Taylor in there more often. But I think they're trying to bide their time until Lucky Fotu comes back. So what they're doing is they're going to activate Jalen Holmes. They may activate him even for a third game. And then they're going to activate Bruce Hector. They're going to elevate them for practice squad, might even elevate both. I'm assuming that's what's going to happen. They're just trying to buy their time. I really hope that once Fotu is back, they don't drop Taylor from the 53-man roster. It really should be Eric Watts to go. So we'll see what happens. Setting the edge has definitely been a problem, but they've had issues up the middle too. I mean, it's a collective effort. They're all, So I see that you said Nania, that Priest retweeted. I'm sure he saw it. You're talking about Fotu. We're IR, not the DL we're talking about. Yeah. So you're saying most teams are running in the middle against the Jets. I mean, the 49ers were running outside. They were running outside zone all the time. And so it was a really a major problem on the edge. Tennessee was kind of both, I think. It was more evenly split between up the middle and outside, but it's been an issue all over the line. Let's see. Dakota, what you say we remain 13th according to NFL rankings. Are you talking about the team rankings or are you talking about something else? I feel like I see a lot of fear and nervous energy in Rodgers when playing this year. I mean, it definitely seems like he doesn't trust his receivers. That seems to be a thing. Even Garrett. I mean, we've seen Garrett drop a couple balls. We've seen him not drag his toe. We've seen a few times where he just hasn't run great routes. I think Rodgers also. I think that's part of it. But I do think he's a little antsy in there. He's afraid to get hit. And he's not trusting his eyes as much. And we'll see if that improves. To go to the Jets will be within top 10 once we beat the Pats Thursday night for home opener. I don't know about that because the Pats aren't considered a great team. So unless the Jets blow them out, I don't know if they'll be top 10. I still think that the Jets, they lost to San Francisco, was a bad loss. They need to win this game and the next two. Beat Denver, beat Minnesota. I don't remember which order it's in. Beat the Patriots. Come into week 6 against the Bills 4-1, and you'll take it from there. Then you're playing again your first good team since week 1. Okay, Vikings notwithstanding, I understand that Brian Flores is a great defensive coordinator, but I still think ultimately the Jets should win that game. And so, even though I actually picked them to lose in my preseason rankings, so they do, but that starts with the Patriots game. You can't overlook any team, as we saw with Tennessee. So I mean, I agree. Fotu is he may be, people automatically assume a 335-pound guy is a good run defender. I mean, there's a reason that not every 335-pound guy makes it in the NFL. Fotu's film from Arizona was pretty terrible, so I was not thrilled with the signing. I thought there were many other cheap free agent options who could stop the run a lot better, and I'm not necessarily anticipating that things get so much better if Fotu comes back. Maybe. I mean, what they're putting out there now is pretty terrible, and for some reason they insist on playing Quinnen either at nose tackle or on the edge. So maybe it will get better, but I'm not counting on it. Johnny Boy, hey, yes, Rodgers has a big brain. Jets need to bring their safeties up to the line of scrimmage and blitz more against the Patriots. Yeah, I agree. They should run blitz a lot. He may not have been good in the Cardinals system. With the Jets, might be a better fit. Not really. I mean, they're asking him. They would ask him to two gap the same way the Cardinals will, even if the Jets play an attacking system. The whole point in getting that big guy in the middle is to have everyone else one gap and to have him do two gap and hold the fort. So I don't know if it's any better of a system. If they're trying to use him as the same penetrator as everyone else, why are you getting a 330-pound guy? You might as well go with some of the smaller defensive tackles they've had. And so they had Al Woods two gap. I don't, even though he came from Seattle, I don't think that that's the case. Momo, we already addressed your comment. Stanley, hopefully Huff hasn't looked good with the Eagles yet. Perhaps Huff was more suited for the Jets scheme. It could be. It does seem like Vic Fangio is not a fan of Bryce Huff. It did also look like the Falcons were chipping Huff a lot, but yeah, he's been completely invisible so far through 2 games. Now, I'm a little bit of a vindictive fan, and when one of my team's guys goes elsewhere, especially if it didn't end great or there were some hard feelings, I want that guy to stink. And so I'm very unhappy that Sam Darnold's looking good. I was very happy when Mekhi Becton gave up a sack yesterday, and I'm glad that Huff hasn't looked good so far, and I would very much appreciate it if it would continue, particularly since everyone was killing the Jets for trading Reddick and letting Huff go. And Huff is terrible against the run, and it's about time that the whole country would see it. Okay, I love Solly. No, Solly has done a. I'll tell you what it is about Solly. His first year with the Jets, he did absolutely nothing. But last year, he was I would say an above average backup defensive tackle. The problem was when they started playing him on every snap, things went a little bit downhill, and he didn't finish the season as strong. But for a lot of the season, he was playing very well, and he's been very active. You've seen him come through a few times. He had the sack, obviously, but a couple of times where he hit the quarterback or he nearly got a sack. And I think Solly definitely has some potential. I just wish he wasn't forced to play more. Jets should use different players to blitz different ones on different plays. Yeah, absolutely. You don't want to be too predictable. Like, I noticed that a lot of times on third down, they have Michael Carter to the second blitz. They do a corner blitz. I mean, if teams know it's coming, if I know it's coming, they definitely know it's coming. And so they're going to stop it. You miss Al Woods. I mean, look, Woods didn't play a ton last year and he was old. So they could have gotten a different 2-gapping type. Woods obviously had a personality people enjoyed, but I think that obviously Woods, once he tore his Achilles, that was basically it for him. You said, so did you see the game that they put Huffman on Atlanta's last drive? They went right to him and beat him. Yeah, no, I mean, Huff has not played well. Did they blitz a ton that first year? I didn't really necessarily look at it, but I think Sal is very stubborn, and so I think the truth is, if you recall, in 2022 Week 3 against Cincinnati, the Jets lost 27-12. Quinnen Williams got into a shouting match with Aaron White-Cotton on the sideline because the Jets had tried to blitz Burrow because in the past he had some struggles against the blitz, and he was absolutely tearing them apart. And so Quinnen was really upset and wanted the Jets to stop blitzing, and he got into an absolute shouting match with White-Cotton. So I don't know if that's always the answer, particularly with the way the Jets play coverage. If they're going to blitz more, they need to start disguising more, and that changes the whole the fundamentals of what they want to do, which kind of I don't know if you can do in 1 week. Is it nuts to get Lawson back? Look, the Cowboys needed edge rusher help. There are several teams that need edge rusher help. Lawson looked atrocious last year. I think he's cooked. Look, we'll see what happens with Huff. He definitely doesn't look great through 2 games with the Jets last year. I mean, I do have to say that part of it is definitely that he downs than he ever did with the Jets. I just want to look up the numbers for Huff through 2 weeks. I'm going to check this because I know he's playing. He has 27 of his 62 plays have been run defense plays. That's 44%. Last year he was at 27%. And so he just the threat of having to account for the run definitely hurts him. Michael Nania had done an article last year talking about when Huff had at least, I think it was, I don't remember, it was 7 or 10 run defense snaps. His pass rush productivity went way, way down. And so the Jets may have been right. I mean, we'll see what happens with him, but the Jets may have been right to cast him in a pass rush specialist role. And in that case, it made sense not to pay him $17 million a year. I mean, look, I wanted Huff back, but I could hear why, because Reddick does hold up better against the run than Huff does. What do you think is the reasoning behind our slow starts? It is us not being as prepared as we should be. Look, it was an issue last year too. There were so many games where they dug themselves into such a deep hole that even when they started playing better, it was too late. And obviously, again, that wasn't Rodgers, but the defense had that issue a lot where the first half and second half splits were dramatic last year for a lot of the season. And so I don't know why it's happening on defense. On offense, I think it's play calling. I think yesterday in particular, or on Sunday in particular, we saw how they went run, pass, run, pass. At some point, they were like, okay, this is not working anymore. And they started going empty or started passing more, and then things opened up. And I think they just have to come out with a more aggressive game script, which is kind of what we talked about with Michael, which is the Patriots are they're giving up 3.3 yards per carry, which is one of the best marks in the NFL. They're clearly set up to stop the run very well. You cannot come out and just try to run the ball down their throats. You need to spread it out. DK, again, Metcalf had a 56-yard touchdown against them. Jackson Smith and Jigbo went over 100 yards. The Jets need to find ways to pass to set up the run rather than the reverse. And yeah, again, if they don't trust their long passing, the screens have worked fairly well. Not always. There was one where Brees only gained 2 yards. But again, they got the touchdown to Braylon Allen, which was a nice little play. It was a nice little design. Again, and they've had success on that kind of play in the past too. I think last year in week 1 against Buffalo, they had one where they faked it to Dalvin Cook and then threw it to Brees and got a nice gain. And so I like that 2-back package. Again, if you do screens too often, it's going to be predictable. But if you find the matchups, you can run screens, flat routes, slants, things like that. Again, gaining 5 yards on first down, it doesn't really matter how you do it. You set yourself up in a favorable position. And so the Jets, they need to come out more aggressive. I mean, also I would look, if you have a one-on-one Mike Williams on the outside, you should be throwing that ball more often than not, because he can go, as he showed last week, he still has it in the contested catch game, and he's pretty consistently over 50%. And so if he's going to catch one out of every 2 or even 2 out of every 3 of those jump balls, I mean, you can throw him a 20, 25, 30-yard pass downfield into single coverage, particularly against man coverage with the cornerback's back is turned. And more likely than not, he's going to catch it. And honestly, if he doesn't, it's very unlikely to be intercepted. And that's exactly up Rodgers' alley. So that's where the Jets should be going. But again, as I said, on offense, they need a better game plan coming in. Some passes were incredible. Yeah, no, Rodgers made some great throws in both games. He just also looked very hesitant in this game. If you want to give Reddick a contract, who walks, AVT, Wilson, or Gardner? AVT. I mean, I think that's just the obvious answer. Frankly, I wasn't even sure if the Jets should pick up his 5th-year option. I see why they did it. I wasn't sure about it. Just after his back-to-back injuries, I think AVT is the one to go. But that's just me. Let's see. Jets win Thursday. We never see Reddick and Jet Green. Jets lose. He's in the building Friday. I don't agree. I think that the way I saw it, before the season started, I predicted that Reddick was going to come in week 6, because the way I saw it was that the Jets would either be 4-1 or 3-2, and they would be starting playing against the Bills, divisional opponent. Tough matchup. And I figured at that point they would prioritize bringing him in. Now, obviously, that was before JJ got hurt. And as Michael said, it would make sense in that somewhere between the Thursday night game and then the following game, the game the following week, where they have a 10-day stretch, that would make the most sense to be a time where the Jets get something done with Reddick. And I don't know how it's going to happen. I mean, look, it sounds like he's being pretty unreasonable. And I'm still not willing to give him a 3-year deal or even a 2-year deal. But I might be willing to just go all out and give him a bunch of void years and just give him what he wants this year, because they need him. I mean, they need him in the pass rush. They even need him in the run game. I mean, you cannot have Will McDonald starting regularly in base. Look, I was a proponent of putting him out there, but I'm sorry. This has just been really bad. Yeah, I mean, so that's what I'm saying. Give him a signing bonus, spread it out over a few years. It's not going to be great for the dead cap. They're going to have a ton of dead cap over the next couple of years. But I think you just have to get it done at this point. Preferably, if you could give him a signing bonus and then still give him incentives to reach the full amount of money that he wants. I don't know if he would take it, but they need to at this point. And look, this is a different tune for me. Until now, I was saying stick it out, stick it out, stick it out. I was fine with JD, but I think at this point you have to bite the bullet. Can we pay them all? No, that's clear. Jets give Reddick a good deal. He rejected it. As far as we understand, we have no clue what deal the Jets offered Reddick. It sounds like it was below market value. And based on Reddick's reaction, it sounds like it may have been an insulting contract, which wouldn't shock me just given JD's history. He tends to lowball people. And let's see. So you're talking about so you're talking about none of the free agent edge defenders are worth signing. People talk about Yannick Ngakoue because they think, they remember him as a sack artist. The guy has not been good in 3 years now. And so I would not sign him. As I said, Lawson is cooked. I don't think there's any free agent who's worth getting. Thanks, Momo. I appreciate it. If plays look for 2 interceptions. It seems to be very, very likely that Eccles is going to play somewhere. The question is if they're missing both Carter and Reed or just one. If they're missing both, it'll be very interesting to see who they start on the outside, whether it will be Stiggers or JBC. Because obviously Stiggers seems like the guy they like more, but JBC is also a year more experienced and and not coming from the CFL. And so if both guys are out, because Eccles would start in the slot, it would be just interesting to see what they would decide to do from there. Hopefully at least one of those guys can play, but honestly, the Patriots are not the worst team to be missing your corners against. Unlike last year where the Jets had it happen against the Eagles. I mean, the Patriots, I get that Jalen Polk is a nice, and they have some guys who look like they're decent, but these are not Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle. No reason to panic. Season is still young. Yeah, there's no reason to panic, but there's reason to be concerned. In 2022, Rodgers played with a broken thumb. Absolutely, and that's kind of one of the reasons that I thought he would still be good last year. But my point is he looks kind of hesitant like he did at times in 2022, and that's really my bigger question. There's no one in the building who has more credibility to winning than Aaron Rodgers. So yeah, trust in Rodgers. Again, it's not that I don't trust Rodgers. It's just that I don't. It's not that I do not trust Rodgers. It's just that I can't say I 100% trust him yet. I want to see him play a little bit better and more consistently. Do you think the Jets will eventually move Quincy to middle linebacker or keep Sherwood there naturally if Mosley is or gets injured again? I think Sherwood should be the middle linebacker. I think that he's been Mosley's direct backup all along. I would have liked to see them sign him to an extension this offseason at a lower price because we saw a lot of good things from him last year. Honestly, I thought they should have played him more often. I wasn't surprised to see him play well in Mosley's place. I think Quincy is better as a sort of an outside linebacker than a middle linebacker. Let's see. Both Smith and Darnold seem to do better out of the Jet system. Smith for sure. Darnold, I want to see 4 more games before I coronate him. Yeah. Momo, I appreciate it. Yes, definitely hit the like button. Will AVT get past the Bronco game? Well, this one's in MetLife, so hopefully he'll get past it this time. Harlan, I appreciate it. What team is willing to trade for Haason without trying to plunder us? None. Meaning any team that trades for Haason Reddick at this point is going to try to get him for pennies on the dollar. And that's one of the reasons JD is unwilling to move on. The question at this point is if this goes on to the trade deadline, can he sort of hold it over a barrel and over teams and say, we are perfectly willing to have Reddick sit on our bench, sit on our reserve list all the time. We're only trading him if you give us something legit. So, Joe Blewett has been saying maybe try to get Jadeveon Clowney, who was the guy they were looking into before they signed Reddick. Clowney is not as good of a pass rusher, but he's a much better run defender, and he would sort of be a JFM replacement in a sense. And so again, now Carolina's not looking to trade for Haason Reddick at this point, but if you're looking for some kind of guy like that, I doubt the Jets would have any leverage, but that's the only thing I can think of that would induce the Jets to trade him. Jets shouldn't give a contract based on past experience. Jets used to do that and got burned several times. I just think you have no choice. Again, you're so in on this season that what are you going to do? Just throw it away because you don't have any edge rushers? Like it just doesn't make any sense. Yeah, no, he's lost because of his ego, but ultimately JD just kind of has to cave. Does anyone know what was said contractually when JD and Reddick met? Who is not being honest here? I think there's a level of dishonesty coming. No, I don't think anyone actually knows what happened, but I think there's a level of dishonesty coming from both sides, and there was also a miscommunication. So what I think happened is that JD, it sounds like he offered Reddick either a contract or even an extension that was at well below market value, and Reddick said no, and probably was insulted. But at the same time, when Reddick came here, and I've been saying this all along, JFM was still here. And so Reddick didn't have a ton of leverage because they just didn't really need him. Once they traded JFM, all of a sudden Reddick is one of their 2 starting edges. They need him. And so I think that may have changed his mind somewhat, even if he gave some sort of verbal agreement. Now, I have my doubts about whether he gave a verbal agreement either. I think the Jets may have assumed that he said, I'm willing to be traded, as meaning I'm willing to agree to your terms. And again, no one knows for sure what happened. We're getting the propaganda from the agent side. We're getting the propaganda from the from the team side, team is using Connor Hughes as a mouthpiece. Agent is using Jordan Schultz as a mouthpiece. So it's impossible to parse out. But I think at this point it's irrelevant. The Jets just need to do what they have to do, what they need to do to get Reddick in the building. It's normal for Rodgers being hesitant. Being coached by Hackett is a reasonable excuse. Yes and no, because ultimately Hackett's not really his coach. Hackett just is sending in options for him to call. And so if he looks hesitant, it means that he's either not trusting his eyes, or he doesn't trust the receiver, or he's not seeing. I mean, the corner route we're talking about to Garrett, he was staring right at it, and he just didn't throw the ball. And then he ran around and had to throw, an incomplete pass. So had to throw it away. And so I think Rodgers definitely gets some of the blame there. No skills. He said, just like we said, if JD fixes the O-line, Darnold will start playing much better. We'll see. Again, it's 2 games. I'm not ready to crown Darnold yet. I understand that he beat a very good 49ers team, but I still suspect that was more about Brian Flores than it was about Darnold. Again, I understand he threw a 97-yard touchdown pass, but I still want to see Darnold carry it. Obviously, I'm also hoping that this is not the case, particularly because the Jets play the Vikings soon. But for the record, I just want to say, and I've been saying this all along, when the Jets had the number 2 overall pick in that draft, I was a proponent of keeping Zach Wilson and keeping Darnold and trading down for a haul. Not because I thought Sam Darnold was the answer, not because I thought he was going to be good, but because I felt that there was no way for any quarterback to succeed with the infrastructure, offensive infrastructure that they had. And so, again, would Darnold have turned into anything here? Probably not. But they definitely would have been in a better position to succeed earlier. And so you have to see what happens. Is trading Haason for Huff possible? No, because Haason wants that contract and the Eagles didn't want to give it to him. So Huff got $17 million for a year. Huff has, again, Huff has $17 million per year. Reddick is looking for $25 million per year. So no, not happening. The only person who thinks Reddick is worth $28 million for minimum 3 years is Reddick. No, absolutely, but I think the Jets need to find a way to get him in the building. Patrick, as I said, Yannick has not been good in 3 years, and so people are talking about him more for the name. And by the way, he's a disgustingly bad run defender too. Just in case you're. Now, seems like Snead threw a blanket over Wilson on Sunday. Again, if Wilson had caught that ball that hit right off his helmet, and also if Rodgers had thrown that corner route, we're talking about Garrett catching, 6 balls for 80-something yards or whatever. I don't think we're having the same conversation. I don't think Snead locked him down. I think there were just a couple of missed connections between the two of them. In an alternate reality, we have JSN and Huff instead of McDonald. Haason happened right after losing Huff. Again, Huff hasn't looked great so far, so I mean, you say what you want to say. I did very much prefer that they would have taken JSN. That was my thing. I'm not crowning Darnold. Just weird that once the Jets finally fix their O-line, Darnold pops up for the Vikings. Yeah, I mean, definitely is weird. Huff is too expensive for what he is. We don't need him back. We have McDonald. McDonald's is definitely not the pass rusher Huff is. I mean, again, Huff so far hasn't had a very good start, but McDonald is definitely not nearly as consistent. Look at the draft class, Mac. I know. I mean, none of them look good. Even Lawrence. Sorry, this keeps happening. Okay. As far as the defensive line, sure, Reddick would be nice to have an additional pass rusher on third down, send both him and McDonald, but in reality, we need another defensive lineman to replace JJ. I mean, yeah, you need to run stuff for which you don't have, but trust me, Yannick Ngakoue ain't a run stuffer. There are really no run stuffers available on the edge. Perhaps if they use Jalen Holmes on the edge as opposed to in the inside because he's a bigger edge, so maybe, or if you got Watson there or something like that, Clemens has been terrible. They kind of gave up. They sold out this season. I would have preferred to keep JFM and Huff, have your run defender, have your pass rusher. I think that would have been smarter. They chose to sell out and to have JJ and Reddick as their starters, and they're reaping the rewards now. I believe that Reddick is in the same position he was before JJ got hurt. He is not a JJ replacement. He's not supposed to be, but ultimately as a pass rusher, he is. Roseman screwed us on Reddick. JD screwed Roseman with Huff. I don't know if Roseman screwed us. He took the best deal he could get, knowing that the Jets knew the score. They knew the score. They knew where they were trading for a guy who wanted a contract. JD screwed himself. In terms of screwing Roseman with Huff, no, I think Roseman thought that his team is a champion. The same reason he signed Barkley. He thought his team was championship caliber and they're going to be playing with a lot of leads. And then Huff could pin his ears back and rush, exactly what the Jets did with him. The fact he paid $17 million for it, I mean, some teams just think that's a going rate. Ngakoue hasn't been good. Have you watched his film? I do know that he was injured one of the last 2 years. Maybe that's why his stats are down. I think it's more, again, he hasn't been good in a few years now. He was never a consistent pressure guy. Look, Will McDonald had 3 sacks the other day statistically, right? Only one of them was a real sack. One of them was a coverage. He was covering. I don't know if he was spying or dropped back into coverage. And the other one was literally Will Levis tripping over his offensive lineman, and he was the nearest guy, so he got credit with the sack. And that tells you just how fluky and not telling the sack stat is. And I just think Ngakoue is not a serious consistent pass rusher. He's a terrible run defender, and I just would not sign him. We need Boord to watch some film on Yannick and to let us know if we should sign him. I mean, unfortunately, Boord is not going to waste his time looking at film on a guy the Jets haven't signed. That's just reality. He never goes through free agent film until the Jets actually sign the guy. And so, I mean, but again, every indication from Yannick is that he's cooked. Our offense opened up as soon as Allen was added into the playing scheme. Yeah, I mean, it's true. To an extent, it's also that they started passing the ball. It's not just that Allen was in there. But, I mean, I like the 2-back set, and I like using Allen as a change of pace. Even I really like Brees, but I just don't think he's looked so good in the first 2 weeks. We're a better team with Allen and Hall playing together. That way no one can target Hall. Yes and no, because, again, you have 2 running backs in the game. You're taking a receiver off the field or a tight end. You're kind of making it harder. Again, Brees had a terrible game in pass pro, caused Rodgers a sack and to get hit. And so, again, that's just a risk you take with running backs on the field is that pass pro, if there's a blitz, you could have an issue. But, yeah, I mean, I definitely like that pony package with the split backs out of the shotgun. Again, we saw it work even 2 years ago with Brees and Carter at times. Brees' 79-yard reception against Miami came in that 2-back set. And so I think it's definitely a good idea. So McDonald, 3 tackles for loss last week. Huff, 0 tackles for loss all of last year. Huff, I mean, if you're talking about tackles for loss, McDonald was credited with 3 sacks. I don't think he had any other tackles for loss. So if you're talking about a tackle for loss, you're talking about a sack, then Huff had 10 of them last year. I can't see McDonald being a good pass rusher. I hope I'm wrong. I mean, the biggest issue with him is that he's inconsistent and he hasn't figured out how to keep people's hands off him. And so it's definitely an issue. He made a good play on that last sack. I mean, he kind of shoved he used power, and then he was able to, because he has long arms, he was able to get up and over and pull Levis down. But, look, for now, McDonald certainly can't be trusted to be a every down edge rusher. Is Ruckert's poor performance because of scheme or his own doing? His own doing. I mean, look, Ruckert wasn't a great run blocker last year, contrary to many Jets fans' opinions. He made a few nice blocks, but the rest of the time he was pretty bad. He totally whiffed a bunch of times in the run game. And then as far as that there was that one play in the end zone where he just stopped running and he looked back for the ball way too early and he continued running. That's a touchdown. Rodgers has 3 touchdowns. The Jets are up 21-10. Totally different ball game. I think that the Jets would have won that game handily if Ruckert had caught that ball instead of going for a field goal. And so, I mean, whichever one you're talking about, I mean, look, I like Ruckert's. I think he has some potential as a route runner, but that was not a good play. And as far as his blocking, I mean, look, he and Brendan Bates had a couple of terrible blocks in this game, and that they need better from both players. McDonald is still a developing player. He'll figure it out. I mean, the problem with it is when you take a guy in the first round and he's already 20, I think by now he's 25, and he looks like he's a situational player at best, and in year 2 he's still not able to give you starter quality snaps. That just looks like a bad draft pick. Again, if he had been a second-round pick there, which is where he was projected, it might be a different story. But as a number 15 overall pick, there are expectations with him. And again, the fact that the Jets let Huff go because they drafted McDonald, again, just makes the pick look bad. I mean, again, I like McDonald. I think he could be good, but I didn't like the pick at 15. I don't know what exactly you're talking about. It kills me when we chose Rucker in his deep tight end class. I wanted two tight end in his class. Who else came out of that class that was actually good? Maybe Trey McBride. But who else came out of that 2022 tight end draft class? Okay, let's check this out. Trey McBride. Okay, so that was a good one. Jelani Woods, whatever. Greg Dulcich. I guess maybe he's better than Rucker. Cade Otton, Daniel Bellinger. Jake Ferguson is another good one, and Isaiah Likely. Jacob Conquo. Yeah, a lot of these. The truth is, a lot of these players are more capable than Rucker. They seem to have bigger roles. I don't know if they're better blockers necessarily. Although again, Rucker hasn't developed as a blocker. I didn't do a ton of prep work. I never do a ton of prep work on mid-round draft picks before the draft because I just think there are too many of them, and I'm not a college football fan, and so I can't say much about drafting Rucker, but yeah, he definitely hasn't turned into the blocker they were hoping he was going to be. I agree. Shouldn't have let Jefferson leave. They paid double the money to Kinlaw. Is McDonald playing special teams? I'm not sure. Let me check that out. I think he definitely did last year, although a lot of it might have been like field goal block. Snaps by position, special teams. No, 2 snaps on punt returns. So he's not really playing specials either. Okay, speaking of Arizona, they might be legit. I think Arizona's defense is going to be too bad for them to be legit, but their offense definitely looks for real, which is what I was expecting, which is why I picked up Kyler Murray and Marvin Harrison Jr. in fantasy. Ravens chose 2 good tight ends in the Cowboys. Yeah, I mean, they got, again, Likely and Ferguson were pretty good, but, again, you draft what you draft. They picked up Rucker because they wanted a blocking tight end, and he hasn't developed into it. Please watch Texas versus Georgia, at least October 18th. Again, I'm not a college football fan. I don't think I've ever watched a down of college football live. So I only watch draft film on likely first-round picks, and then once the Jets draft guys, I check the film out from there. Anyways, I think we are. I'm pretty much out of time. Thank you guys so much for coming and for commenting. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Subscribe to jetsxfactor.com. Discount code 80. Check out our YouTube memberships. If you don't, it's I think $1 or $2 cheaper per month than Jets X Factor memberships. Please remember to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you guys. Take care. Have a great day.